October 19, 5+1, 6+1 interview session, the 3 o'clock session. With me, I have Dr. Tolu Odebumi and I'm Dr. O. Do we have Dr. Shola Fapo on session? He's one of our active participants. Are you available? Okay, so that candidate is not available. I'm going to proceed to Dr. Kanechuku. Are you available? Do you hear me? Okay. What about Dr. Tolu? Is Dr. Tolu available?
I'm Folu.
Yes, I
but
am.
I don't know.
Okay, so we're going to go. Go ahead.
Tolu is available.
Okay, so we're going to take Dr. Tolu's question. So this question is the one that was allocated to you earlier. I will read it out just for the benefit of this session. If you could, what is one thing you would change about yourself?
Thank you very much for that question. When I started out on my current job as a general practitioner, I was made the head of clinical services. And then in discharging my duties, I realized that my ability to delegate tasks and duties was not as good as I wanted it to be. So I ended up doing a lot of things myself and not being efficient with my time. So I had to speak with my chief medical director, who gave me some recommendations on how to delegate duties. And then that followed. He also followed that up with a course for the heads of departments. And going forward from that, I was able to allocate my time well and also delegate duties. And this is something I'm still trying to work on. But so far, what I've been able to glean from him has helped me to become more efficient and help me to manage my time well. Thank you.
Okay, so let's say, Dr. Tolu, what's your take on that response? What do you think?
Okay, so first I'll say it was good. It was clear, and I like the fact that you talked about something that it's a skill that is needed in residency. I would have preferred if you mentioned what you want to change about yourself first, because you just went into the story. So I had to wait to listen for you want to change this about yourself. So it might be better to say maybe delegating more and giving the story. I like the fact that you talked about you were weak in this thing and what you're doing or what you started to do to get better at it. And you didn't end like, oh, I'm great right now. It sounds more like, oh, it's still a work in progress, which I think makes a lot of sense. So yeah, if I'll give a feedback, that's the only thing I would give a feedback to, like maybe mention it initially, then give a story to explain whatever you want to change about yourself.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I should just mention the problem first, then follow it up with my story. Then. Okay.
I mean, for some people, it's okay to launch into the story, but I'm just thinking of an interviewer who is seeing like a bunch of people, and once you start like, oh, why is she talking about a story? Like, where is she getting to? But if it's like, yeah, I want to change this about myself, and explain or give a story like you did. It gives like, oh, I see what you're saying. Because initially when you started, I was like, where is this going to?
Where is she going? Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it just helps people just arrange information in their mind. That's just it.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you have Dr. Folu available at this point?
Yes, I'm here. Yes, Folu here.
Excellent. I do have a question for you. How do you plan to use your training in the United States to benefit your mother country?
Hi, thank you for that. My name is Folu. Well, I would say my passion to help people in need have led me not only to get a medical degree, But also as a student, I was able to start a non-profit organization to help take care of the people of Dominica's healthcare expenses, as well as educate them in prevention. So now, when I'm a physician, my hope is to make healthcare accessible to people in the rural area who are in dire need of doctors. And I consider myself an advocate for healthy living, which is something I'm very passionate about. I would educate my patient and also make sure they understand about preventive health. As we all know, preventive health is the future, and this is the best way to improve the health of a patient as well as the community. And lastly, I think one thing I would change, I'm looking forward to, would be impacting my knowledge and experience on future doctors, because people like you and other attendings have impacted their medical knowledge as well as experiences in me for the opportunity to be seated right here in front of you today. So I hope that one day I can give back to the community being a family medicine physician. Thank you.
Okay, before I defer to Dr. Tolu in giving us a feedback, it would be nice to identify your country, mother country, because even though Kanji is geared towards Nigerians, but we're seeing a lot more people from
Mm-hmm.
other areas, and we
Okay.
also should not assume that they do know where we came from or you came from.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if you can even narrow it down to a part of the country where you come from, because some people actually do know enough about your country, then I'll let
Okay.
Dr. Tolu come up with some additions to this feedback.
Okay. Thanks for responding. So I was trying to write down a couple of points that I got from what you said. So I could pick out accessible healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
advocacy, and like preventive medicine.
Mm-hmm.
These are the major three things I could pick out from what you said. So this question, it's something that they ask in very different ways. And I remember when I was preparing for my own interview, someone suggested that before I answer this question, I should make it clear that something like where you see yourself. For example, I see myself serving or working maybe in the city of that program, because except you want to go back. But someone was telling me that why would I waste my time training a doctor who's not going to serve patients in Minnesota? Because that's the idea of, serving in a particular place. So you want to say that you're looking forward to, maybe working as a family medicine doctor serving patients here. And about preventive medicine, mentorship, and maybe advocacy, you plan on targeting these areas back in your country or whatever area in your country, like Dr. O said. You can say by maybe forming a advocacy committee, working with colleagues there, something like that. So fine, you explain everything you're passionate about, but I still don't see how, because it was like, okay, you're passionate about these things, but how? So it might be good to say, like what I said, in those sections, what you want to do in that city where you're intervening at, what you stop doing, and you're passionate about these three things. So you're thinking that you would liaise with colleagues over there to do this and that.
Mm-hmm.
You get my point?
Yeah.
It's just neater. It's more packaged. The person understands that you really want to stay here. You want to practice here, and because you have this global mentality based on your passion. You're going to do 1, 2, 3 stuff in. It just it helps us to go like, oh, that's interesting. You get my point?
I get you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So basically, I would try and get my point across and also make them understand that I want to be here, but with the help of others, I will be able to make that difference, right?
Yeah. So you can use it as maybe create this and that. Maybe this initiative back home, work with other colleagues in in this country, and something is so maybe I know that we say back home a lot. I would say reduce that a little, because you're trying to frame a point that this is home now for you. You can say, oh, if you just went to
Okay.
the country, like Dr. O said, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
in this, in that,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. So instead of saying back, it's like, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so, yeah. And if you just say,
Thank
let
you
the
for that.
colleagues in this country to do this and that, yeah, it's just, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
That
so
makes sense.
just to round it up, so basic. See, somebody's on that phone. So to round it up, um, you want to bring out the fact that your primary preoccupation is where you are now to gain the education. You want to benefit your local community here. And then, of course,
Mm-hmm.
you can tie that into your area of interest. And then you can then share the fact that you have plans to do X, Y, Z in your mother country. And most of that would also align with what you've already identified as your area of interests. So it's just a matter of organizing your thought and then figure out, how do I answer this question so that it doesn't look like, okay, these people will trade me, then I just disappear, head back to where I came from. So that would be a good
Okay.
tip.
Thank you so much.
Do we have Dr. Kenechukwu available? Dr. Kenechukwu?
That's your earphone.
Dr. Kenechukwu, are you available? Okay, so we'll move on to the next question.
Yes, I'm available. Dr. Kenetiku here. Sorry.
Very good. You're not silent on me. Thank you very much. So your allocated question is this: what aspect of medicine do you find the most challenging?
Okay. Thank you for the question. Um, in medicine, I find dealing with patients with some um, apparently not obvious medical problems and trying to figure out what it is. I find out really challenging, and I try to oh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. I find it challenging um, trying to work in teams to solve cases that seem ordinarily not obvious on the surface, and I find it really interesting and also fulfilling in the end when we're able to help patients out and then to solve their problems. Uh, and I'll leave it to a case. Maybe I think I'll leave that to a case that I had while still, because I'm still a resident doctor here in Nigeria. Like I'm presently a resident doctor in Nigeria, and some cases that we have an idea what it was, but after further consultations and investigating, we found out that it was a strange and not common disease, and in the end, seeing the patients recover using the proper treatment regimen.
Looks like I lost you. Are you still there?
And I'm here.
Okay, very good. So are you done or you still have a little bit to say?
Hello?
Okay, so we'll give a feedback on that particular question. Dr. Kenechukwu, are you still available? Are you still there? Okay, so I will continue to talk, hoping that you can get access to the recorded version later on. The benefit of this first stage of the exercise is so that people can take the time to practice and write their responses down. Not that we recommend that you read it out, but at least you would have had a few opportunities to actually go through your thought process and then see how it flows. So I don't get that sense with the response by Dr. Kenechukwu. So, but there's still the whole idea is to practice. So this is what this is all about. I'll let Dr. Tolu share her thoughts as well.
Okay. So the response. So personally, I didn't like the response for what do you find most challenging in medicine, because that response sounds like something that's intriguing about medicine, even though it's bad news for the patient to have an uncommon or a really bad lab or whatever, or a very rare diagnosis or disease. It's more like intriguing, interesting. So if you start with challenging and then interesting, I mean, when I first heard it, maybe it was the way you presented it, Kerechukwu, but I just felt like, well, maybe not use this. So, but that's just my opinion. I was thinking more in the line of maybe talk about the cost of healthcare, healthcare access, breaking bad news to patient relatives, or even patients, the things that you would face every day in residency that you have to do. You have to build skills about how to do it, things you experience. Yeah, I was thinking something challenging more in those lines, but you don't have to use those reasons. I mean, if you want to stick with a rare diagnosis or finding it hard to know what's happening with a patient, you have to reward it in a different way, Yeah.
Okay,
That's my feedback on that.
it's a very fairly tricky question. But the like I mentioned earlier, since people have had a few opportunities to actually think it through, um, the performance should be much better. The easier options, because you want to make your interview as simple as possible, and you can almost guide or direct the pace. And even in the way you respond, you can pick areas that can flow easily into other interesting aspects. I have Dr. Obina on the session. I would just like him to share his perspective on that particular question.
Hello. Yeah, Dr. Obina. So I agree with everything, Dr. It's Dr. Tolu, right? I agree with
Yes.
everything she
Yeah.
said. So yes, that's basically the way I would approach that question if I was asked. So basically, I'll just go on. I'll make a very good list of all the challenges that you personally face. And even if you don't, if let's say you don't really have like a clear idea of what it is, you can ask around, maybe look online and see like what are the very common problems physicians face, basically in the US, because there's a whole lot of things. So like Polu said, yeah, insurance, dealing with people with no insurance, trying to communicate with people, like that. Sometimes there could be a communication gap depending on where you're working, and yeah, breaking bad news, dealing with like fatigue, burnout, time, like trying to manage your time efficiently, especially when you have to do a lot of things like probably see patients and documents in the AMR and so many other things. You could even give, I mean, the whole the whole EMR system for us as INGs too could also be a challenge. Like let's say I mean, for me personally, I could give that as an example. Yeah, one of the things I found most challenging, especially migrating here to the US during my observerships, was that using the EMR system, trying to be efficient. But then I worked on it, and I've been working on it constantly, and I see myself improving. But I still feel like it's a big challenge, something. But then when you're giving your examples, you still have to find a way to turn it into a positive. So yes, you find this challenging, but yes, you found ways around it, or you've been able to work this way around it, or you've read about ways in which this could have improved or this could improve. And you're trying to, either you're trying to get on a project on trying to improve that, or you're working on yourself and trying to improve it, or you're basically just aware about it. And yeah, that's how I approach it. And then one thing I like to do when I'm interviewing, and I think that makes you a good interviewer too, is I noticed I was actually listening to a lot of your responses from the beginning of the session, but I noticed that a lot of you are not, you're basically just answering the question, but there's no link. Like, I don't see the link of your response and the reason why you're here, because I mean, at the end of the day, it's a residency interview, right? So there has to be some kind of link somewhere. Like when I tell people practicing it, when you're practicing it, you don't have to like overdo it or overexpress it, but there has to be some kind of link. So I want to say something like, I mean, supposedly in residency, if I was faced with this kind of challenge, I'm sure I'm probably going to be faced with this kind of challenge even here in this program if I were to match here or something like that. And this is one of the things I've seen to be able to overcome this, or this is one of the, this is basically what I've been doing to be able to overcome this challenge, or something like that, so that it just makes sense and it kind of brings it. Well, people use the term bringing it home, so you have to find a way to still link it back to your interview and make it a reason, like why you're probably a good candidate, or why we should choose you for this program or something like that. Another thing I've noticed people doing in the beginning of the question is, thank you for this question, thank you for this response. So I mean, I I feel like it takes up time when you say that, and I don't think you should do it a lot in your interviews. You don't have to thank them for the question they're asking you all the time. Just answer the question. And I tell people it's good skill to use when you're answering questions. Like now, I don't know if Dr. O can read me the question again, but he said, "What do you find the most challenging in medicine?" If I'm going to respond to that question, what I'll start with is, what I find the most challenging in medicine is so and so and so forth and so on. It just, it's basically, it just, I guess it keeps the flow going, and the person who is asking you is already like on point, and we're basically seeing we're beginning to look out for your answers. You don't have to like start with a story, or just go straight to the point. Yes, you can infuse a story in the middle, but I think it's still better to be on point right from the beginning so that you don't lose the interviewer. So that's basically the comment I had to make.
Thank you very much. I have a question for Dr. Ife Olutola. Are you available?
Yes, I'm available.
Thank you very much. So your question is this: apart from the diversity of our program and the high board exam pass rate, what attracted you to our residency program?
Um, so what attracted me to this residency program is the program's policy that actually aligns with my passion for holistic care for the patients. One of the um, one of the policies of the program talks about holistic care for the patient, not just like looking at other social, economic determinants of health. Also, I saw that this program is also a pace setter in innovation and emphasizes on hands-on approach for each of its residents. And also, finally, the stellar and dynamic faculty in this program. The faculty is the opportunity to learn from each and every one of them, and it's a privilege to be here. Thank you.
Okay, so uh, it's a fairly good attempt. I won't say very good attempt, but the essence of this question is to eliminate the obvious responses that the generic form of this question uh, generates. So that's why you see that we eliminated that high board pass rate. We also eliminated the diversity. But if you take a
Yes.
similar approach to what we discussed, or what Dr. Chulu and Dr. Obina used in the approach to the last question,
Yep.
you'll see that there's a long list. It's just a matter of now pulling those other things that are way down on your list. Because most of us will talk about diversity, and then we'll talk about the exam pass rate. So, but there are other things that you need to now bring on point, or bring up on your list. And with this particular question, since you already know where you're going for your interview, it would be nice to
Yes.
actually find specifics. So, of course, everybody's going to talk about holistic or dynamic. We have all the common lingo. But it would be nice if you say, you know what, I actually was reading the last publication by Dr. X on that particular person's interest in, infectious diseases. So that, because you already know you're going there, so it doesn't take much
Okay.
effort to find something specific. Oh, by the way, I noticed that your pediatric department has this unique program, is the only one in this region. So that way they can tell that this person is actually engaged with this program. So I'll let Dr. Tolu add to that.
Okay. So you mentioned three things: holistic care, hands-on experience for residents and the faculty. So I've been hearing holistic care a lot, and of course, everyone talks about holistic care. It would be nice to, use the word patient-centered also if you're going to use that. And when it comes to hands-on experience for residents, we can talk about a resident-centered curriculum, autonomy, words like that. They just cover many things. And Dr. O already said this. I didn't really think your reasons were personal. You just say, oh, it just sounded more like I said on your website and I want to come. For example, when I used to say stuff like your residents are happy, because that sounds very okay, it doesn't sound formal, or it doesn't sound like it was a website thing, but it's a real thing. Like, your residents are happy if I'm talking about residents here. And I go on to explain autonomy, your residents like curriculum, work-life balance, and stuff like that, So that sounded like it was personal to me, even though I'm still going to mention the whole autonomy and resident-centered curriculum. And for patient-centered care, you have to add more to it. So the whole idea is this has to be personal to you. And Dr. already mentioned this. Sometimes it's okay to mention the usual things people will talk about. But I would say that mention the very personal, specific things to you first. Then you can add diversity somewhere at the end, just adding it. So my feedback would be make it more personal and sound more excited about the program. It just sounded like, oh yeah, I like this, I like that. But like what Dr. Obina was saying, tie to the end. And this is what I've been looking for in a program, use words like that. I am really excited to be here. During the tour, launch was amazing. So you have to bring in things that happened that day also, even though it sounds like what our program. Talk about the things you liked before. They talk about things you liked that day. Yeah, it just makes it seem like, oh my gosh, you're having the best day of your life during the interview. Yeah. Hello?
Hello?
Hello.
Are you available, Dr. Lushala Fakpo? Dr. Fakpo, that will be a question for you. Are you available?
Yes, I am available.
Okay, sorry, that was my microphone. I tuned it off briefly. Your question is this: how did you come to select this specialty of medicine as your field of choice?
Curiosity, compassion, and service. Those are the reasons why I made pediatrics my specialty of choice. Growing up back home in Nigeria, I was gifted this magazine by my father, which actually outlined the health challenges faced by children in various communities. Bringing that story back home, I knew some children who did not live up to their 5th birthday. I really wanted to help, and I had so many questions in my mind, but how to help, I didn't know how. It was when I got to high school, I actually attended a boarding high school, and I would fall sick term after term, sometimes malaria, measles, and chickenpox, and I would frequent the sick bay. There, the doctor would treat me and make sure that I got back to good health in no time. At that point, I knew that I wanted to be a doctor to make the health of children better. By the time I got to medical school, sadly, just before my pediatric rotation, I lost my niece to a congenital heart disease. I saw how pediatricians were very dedicated, compassionate, and passionate about treating children. And this experience continued by the time I started my pediatric rotation and saw the passion with which pediatricians took care of their patients. By that time, I knew for a fact that I wanted to be a pediatrician for the rest of my life. And because I knew early on what I wanted to do, I've been able to streamline my experiences towards the pediatric population. And in giving back to the community, I've been able to provide healthcare to children in various communities. I've been able to teach children over the years, and I've been able to conduct research in pediatric population. And I've been able to answer some of the questions I had back as a child. And I believe your program would be able to sharpen the skills and experiences I've gained over time and help me achieve this goal of being a pediatrician. And if I would have to make the choice all over again, I would want to be a pediatrician again. So to just summarize, compassion, curiosity, and service are the reasons why I made pediatrics my specialty of choice.
Okay, so Dr. Bina, this will be yours to handle. Good job, though, by the way.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, hello. Sorry, my mic was off.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
so I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of half and half on your response. I mean, some parts of it I like, some parts I was like, I don't know. So I guess I'll just have to go with. Okay, let me just start with the things I didn't like about the response. I just felt like it was kind of sounding gloomy in the beginning. Like it always had to do with somebody falling sick or somebody dying. And honestly, some parts of it it didn't sound like, just listening to it, it wasn't sounding like it was true. It sounds like a lot of them were, and this is just my perception, and just I'm not saying it wasn't true, but I wanted to be a little bit more realistic about answering this question. So okay, let me tell you the parts I felt like it was sounding like, okay, maybe this is a bit of a stretch. Like when you said you felt like you were in school during your times in boarding school, you felt sick with measles and chickenpox and malaria. And I mean, in my mind, I'm like, really? I felt like somebody else may also go like, really? So you are just having all this. So it was like, were you just having this recurrently, or do you have some kind of problem with your immune system? Or it's not like, I'm not saying it's not possible, but I don't know. And it sounded a bit rehearsed to me, but that's fine because I know you're probably reading it out or you're probably still trying to work your way around it. But I'll say the more you practice, you have to practice answers in such a way that if you are asked it on the spot, it doesn't want to seem like you're reading something off a list, or is it basically you don't want to sound rehearsed. To me, it sounded rehearsed. So I'm sorry, I just have to kind of give you my own what I feel personally, pointers and everything. The third thing was I felt like it was a bit long and you were saying some things that were not really relevant to the question. You were kind of answering some other questions that could probably come up later. I'm not saying that everything you were saying wasn't okay. It was definitely okay. There are things that I should probably say in your personal statement, but this is the question they're asking you right now is why are you in love with pediatrics? Why did you choose pediatrics, basically? So I'll stick with that narrative. I actually liked how you started. You definitely you listed three things, right? Compassion, service, and honestly, I can't remember the other one. But you listed three things, and I was trying to follow through with the three things you listed, but I think I eventually got lost because what I was thinking in my mind is where does the service come in? Where is the compassion coming in? Where is the curiosity coming in? I mean, I thought okay, when you started with curiosity, in my mind, the example you gave, I was like, okay, maybe seeing. Okay. So basically, I know everything is in your answer, but it just has to be a bit more organized. If I was going to answer this question like the way you did it, I'll start. Yeah, I like the way you started. There are three things. There are three reasons why I fell in love with pediatrics. One of them is curiosity. One of them is compassion, and one of them is a future service or my in dying need or the want to actually serve the population or something like that. So starting with curiosity, then you go on. The reason why I became curious about pediatrics is because when I was young, I saw a lot of children dying, or you can give your story like how children died, and you are kind of just wondering like what's happening to these people, and it kind of sparked a curiosity in you, and you are asking around, and so just make it flow. Curiosity, compassion, my compassion for whatever you're compassionate about, or how the compassion followed into your life story about pediatrics. So I just feel like the critique I'll give is I don't want to like repeat your response, but I just want to maybe let you know that when you're answering this question, you should be more organized. Stick with your points and follow them through, and make the interviewer know that these are the points you're giving, and this is the reason for the points you're giving. Don't sound rehearsed. A lot of the information wasn't necessary, but I actually liked the way you tried to tie it back into residency. That was a good skill there. But just keep it more narrow, keep it straightforward to the question, be more organized, don't sound rehearsed. When you're answering your question, just try to, answer it and keep it in your head, write it down, that's fine. But just answer it in such a way that if you are talking to somebody or your friend or let's say your co-worker or something, and you are just trying to give them the reasons why you like this, this specialty. It's just like you're having a conversation. You don't want it to just sound like this flowing, and it's. I don't know. I just felt like, to me, it felt like you are reading from your personal statement or you are reading from the book. It sounded like that to me. So you don't want to sound like that on your interview. That's the critique I had to give.
Thank you.
Very good. So remember, we know this session is about the allocated or pre-allocated questions. So it's not uncommon for applicants to have a lot more material, especially if you have written it down, which is not a bad, this is actually a good testing ground for you to kind of dump everything and see what people say. But back to Dr. Obina's point, I think there's about good 50 to 60% good material. So you have to go back and look at your written material, eliminate the redundant aspects. There's still a little controversy as to, do you use every question to sell the reason why you're attending the interview? You may be forced into a very lukewarm conclusion. So use your judgment. So some questions does not allow you to actually sell yourself a little bit or remind the interviewer why you're on the ground. So don't get boxed into that angle with every question that you get. We have an extra candidate on this session, so I'm going to pose this question to, this is also another pre-allocated question to Dr. Tomi. Your question, Dr. Tomi, are you available?
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Okay, it looks like your microphone is low. Are you available?
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Okay, very good. So your question is this: knowing that our residency program offers only J1 visas, what influenced your decision to apply to our program?
Yeah, so to be honest, when I was searching and doing my research on the programs to apply to, the type of visas offered was part of the things I looked out for. And however, on coming across this program doing my research, it became lower on the list of the things I looked for because one, this program is one of this program, this program is one of only 3 in the country that offer the combined program in internal medicine, preventive medicine, and that would be my top choice in type of specialty if I were to go into going into residency. I also considered this program because of the location. I live relatively close by, and I think it would be easy for me to transition here. I also grew up in a city similar to what we have here in Derby, Connecticut, and it's urban, but it's not too fast paced, and I'm used to that kind of environment, and I just think it would be a perfect fit for me. Lastly, I've also found out that this program is affiliated with the Yale School of Public Health, and having learned from another seasoned faculty during my Masters of Public Health at Harvard, I think it would be a perfect, it would be wonderful for me to have the opportunity to learn not just from the faculty at Griffin Hospital, but also from the faculty at Yale School of Public Health. Of particular interest to me is Dr. Costales' work, where she does lifestyle wellness, lifestyle medicine, through the CPLM's Wellness for Life program, and the fact that something like that already exists here, where there's a 12-week integrated program where patients are being taught to take a hold of their health through lifestyle changes, nutrition, and exercise. I think that's something I'll learn to learn and get more involved with. I see myself replicating such programs in other places, and I think it would be a privilege for me to train here. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, wonderful. So thanks so much for the response. This first part of the session is basically targeted towards questions that you've had at least for 24, 48 hours before time. That way you can actually, even practice with your friend, write it down, and then see how it flows, and then deliver it during such a, meeting like this. So I think everybody did well in terms of meeting the minimum requirement. Back to the last interviewee, that's Dr. Chomi, you'll see that your question is not that much different from the question that we asked Dr. Olushola Fapo, because basically what we're looking for is all this unique, no, not Dr. Olushola, that's Dr. Ife Olutola. We're basically looking for all these other materials that relates to the program you're applying for. So the delivery was excellent, so we like that. I'll let Dr. Tolu share thoughts on that.
Okay. I liked one thing about this, about your response to me, because I was wondering how you're going to start. I like this that you owned type of visas as a reason to consider programs, because most people you didn't dismiss it, which I liked. Because dismissing it sounds like you're not being truthful, because type of visas for IMGs comes into play. So I like the fact that you started with that when you were researching, visa types was something that you looked at. I like the fact that you made it that it's important to you, but it became low on your list because of this, and that you liked. That was the second part I enjoyed, because it just sounds like you're being very sincere. And you went into the specifics you liked. I don't have much to change about that, but just so that I like the fact that you own that visas can be, really can be a huge thing in, thinking about stuff. And I like how you ended that you're looking forward. The reason I was gonna say is there's a part where you said that if I get a residency here, so try to go from if I get this and that. Talk about what you like about the program, what you see yourself. Because if you're putting visa, which is important to you, as lower, then you have to go and say that I love your program, I want to be here. Not too forward, but at the same time, not if I get it. Just leave out if. Use more words like I believe, I'm confident than this and this. Of course, your body language is humble, not so, that sort of thing. But I just feel like if, because yeah. So that's the feedback I have about this question.
So, like, I have something to contribute also to this. So, like, basically, the reason why I had to jump in is because it happens. I feel like this happens. It's definitely going to happen everywhere you go, regardless of the visa question always comes up. Sometimes it doesn't, but most times it's going to come up. And it just comes up in the most random. It doesn't, for me, I don't think it comes up as a specific interview question, like the way Dr. O asked it. It doesn't usually come up like that. Basically, it's just a straightforward question, like, hey, we offer a J1 visa, so what do you think about that? Like, what do you think? So we don't have H1 visa. I hope you know about that, or something like that. Like it would be like a side comment, or it could be like something like they're just trying to confirm from you, like, what is your take about this? Like, are you going to rank us lower? I mean, they're not going to say it like that, but what they're thinking in their minds is the fact that we don't have a H1 visa, or we don't offer a H1 visa, which is what every ING is probably looking for. Are you going to now rank us lower because we don't offer you the H1 visa? Pretty much. That's what's going on in their minds when they're asking you that question. So I liked Tommy's response. I'm not saying Tommy's response was bad, but I think your approach to this question should just be straightforward. You should be a straight shooter with this question. You just want to let them know that either it's going to be a problem for you, or it's not going to be a problem for you, basically. My approach during my interviews when these questions came up, I just told the truth. And honestly, to be frankly honest, when I was actually applying for residency, I'm not saying everybody should take my approach or everywhere, but the visa thing wasn't really an issue for me at all. Like, I never saw, like, I didn't have the mindset of, if I don't mind, if I get into a program that there's no H1, that, oh, it's going to be like a disadvantage, or let me just try and be shooting for the H1 program. I didn't have that kind of mindset, and that's kind of how I also portrayed it when I was going for my interviews. So when they bring throw those questions to me, I usually tell them, as an IMG, is either I get into a program with a J1 visa or a H1 visa, and it doesn't. To me, honestly, it doesn't matter which visa I'm on. That's not even what I'm really looking out for. To be honest, I know it's going a little bit against what Tolu is saying, but that was my approach. I usually told them it just didn't matter to me as long as they can sponsor a visa, because I'm an IMG and I need a visa. If it's a H1 visa, good and fine. If it's a J1 visa, still good and fine. But here's the thing. The reason why I love your program is because of this and this and this. And this is why I want to be in this program. And you wouldn't even be there if they couldn't sponsor a visa for you. For me, it's just either if they could sponsor a visa, or if they could not sponsor a visa, I wouldn't be here interviewing. So the fact that I'm here interviewing means they could sponsor my visa. What visa it is didn't really matter to me, and I made it very 100% clear that this really doesn't matter. It just, I mean, when they bring up the questions to me, I used to tell them it doesn't matter if it's a J1 visa or a H1 visa to me. That's not what I'm looking out for. There are other things I'm looking out for in the residency program. The reason why I'm here is because of this, and I know that your program has to offer me this. In terms of the visa, I really don't care as long as I'm able to hop on and there's a visa, like if it's a J1 visa, if it's a H1 visa, I'm just telling you my approach, and I don't think it really affected me. And I mean, one thing about residency is one thing about interviews is sometimes you just have to be as honest, as clear and as honest as you can be. So I mean, people can see through you when you're being very honest. I was honest, and I made it clear, very clear, that this is just not. I don't see it as anything. It's not top of my list. I don't care about it basically. So, but yes, I think the approach of maybe putting it lower on your list could be a good approach. But I'm just saying, like, this was my approach, and I think it could, if that's how you're thinking as well, I don't think it's a bad thing for you as well. So that's the only point I had to make.
Thank you very much. So we'll move on to the spot on
Thank you.
questions component of this afternoon 3 p.m. session. So my first question will be going to Foluwakemi. Are you still there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, your question is this. How would you deal with a fellow resident that you feel poses a risk to patient care?
Okay. In my dealings with a fellow resident, I think poses a risk to a patient care. Putting the patient care first as the most important thing. I would first meet my fellow resident and ask if there was any way I could help out in the patient care. If he needed my care, then if he needed my help or he wanted me to help, I'm going to help in as much as I can help my fellow resident. And if I see that those resident is being stubborn, putting the patient care at risk, then I would go to my seniors and have them talk to him and see what the problem is. If he doesn't respond to my helping hand, then I'll have to involve like my seniors or attendings in it so that without putting the patient at risk. So I think that's the way I would go about it. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. So you'll find out that the questions that we present during the spot on, as half of this program, they're not easy questions, so don't feel bad if you have to pause. But this particular question, in thinking through this question, I think it may be helpful if you actually identify an instance, because it's an open-ended question. So is it a colleague who is intoxicated, a colleague who is sick, somebody with mental health issues? So that might be a way to kind of narrow down and then target your response to that. So I'll then pass on to Dr. Tolu to see what she thinks.
Yeah, Dr. O is right, because this is very situational. I like the fact that you mentioned going to talk with the resident directly, So, but if it's an interfere resident, it's more of telling the resident that you have to step down. Like you have to, you can't continue providing care. So I think it's important to, in as much as you say, I want to talk with the residents first and ask what's happening, get a clearer picture of exactly, what is going on with the resident before escalating, talking with, supervisors or senior residents if the resident refuses. And give an example, for example, if the resident is maybe intoxicated, then the resident is not fit to provide care. You have to let that, be known and say you will do this and that. Yeah. So I think that should be the approach to the question, because it's honestly very situational. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask another question, and that particular feedback will be coming from Dr. Obina. So this question will be directed at Dr. Tolu. Are you available?
Yes, I am, sir.
So the question I have for Dr. Tolu is this. Our program does not allow moonlighting. Is that something you are aware about? how does that affect your choice of a program?
Hmm. In considering a place where I would want to do my residency training, moonlighting did not come on my list at all. So I don't see this as a problem, not having to be able to moonlight, because my major focus is getting the best out of this residency training and then becoming a fully grounded pediatrician. And I can have all the time to moonlight after my residency training is over. Thank you.
Dr. Bina, kindly respond.
So yeah, I actually liked the response, but I felt like it was a bit short and not very well. I don't know. I just felt like it could be answered better. But your point was it definitely came across very clear to me. It just I would say maybe the wordings was could be better. So I like the way you started. If I was to answer this question, I'll probably still take your approach. I like your approach. So I would say something like I know this program doesn't allow moonlighting, and honestly, moonlighting didn't. It wasn't one of the top things I was looking for in the residency program, and I particularly wasn't really taking too much to moonlighting due to the fact that it's probably going to take away some time away from from me studying, from me gaining some academic, increasing my fund of knowledge, clinical skills, and probably just something academic, maybe like time away from conferences, time away from being able to work on research projects, time from just having time for myself to study. Because basically, what I'm looking for in the residency program is a place that is going to train me to be grounded, as you said, and also for me to have time to work on myself, to develop myself to be the best pediatrician that I can be. So I definitely want to have time to study. I want to have time to be able to go through materials, time to be able to attend conferences if I could, time to be able to discuss things with my attendees and blah, blah, blah. So I feel like if I were to moonlight, that would probably take time away. And I mean, I don't really care too much about the money. We don't want to make it as if it's like, I don't care too much about, the money I could make from that, but I'm just like more focused on my career goals, being able to achieve my career goals in the in the best possible time as I can be, in the shortest period that I can do it or something. But yes, I like your approach. It was clear, but I just felt like it could be worded better
It could have been
and
longer. Okay.
not longer, but worded better. Yeah, basically.
Worded better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like you want to really, really convince. Like if I ask you that question, I want you to convince me that moonlighting is not going to be a problem for you. So you really, I felt like your answer was okay, but there was not much conviction. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it's just more like wording it better and making sure that you convince that person.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
So we have a question here for Dr. Ife Olutola. Are you available?
Yeah.
Okay. Even though this question may not directly pertain to you, but that's your luck for today. This is the second year that you have interviewed at our program. How hopeful are you, or how competitive do you see yourself at this time?
Okay. I know that this is probably my second year of applying, but I believe that I'm a competitive candidate because even though I might not have succeeded at first, I have taken time to write my step three. I've taken time to gain more experience. I've also taken time to undergo research. So all of this, bringing it to the table, I feel like I'm going to be a better candidate.
Okay. Thank you very much. So that's not a bad take. Remember, these are spot on questions, so nobody's prepared for it. So don't feel bad if you're short of words. But if you go back and replay the video from the last week session, there was a question that taps into, kind of unrelated, but you'll find materials that you could have used. You see the use of the word hopeful and then competitive. So that hopeful taps into optimism about the possible outcome, and then competitiveness taps into what have you done so far that puts you in a better shape. So that particular recording will be very useful. I'll let Dr. Tolu respond to that.
Yeah. So one thing I'm going to say is that if a program is inviting you for a second, for a second interview, and they can remember interviewing you the first time, then there's something about you or about your opportunity that they really like. I like the approach about talking about things that are different. It would be good to mention that, and also be good to talk about the fact that even though you didn't match in that program the first time, you worked on this, and that, and you really like the program. You know, mention things about why you really like the program, why you want to come there, even if you don't want to go there anyway, you know. But it's nice to talk about that I really like your program, and because of this and that, I believe that, you know, whatever. And I don't know if it's a real situation. It's possible that you've spoken with a couple of residents in that program, or even talk to people like the PD, or ask questions about, or how can I make myself more competitive for next year. It will be a good place to add that. I spoke with this person and that person. They pointed these things out to me, and I worked on it, because it sounds like, oh my gosh, like you weren't just drumming up things to make yourself look better on paper, but you actually went to ask questions. So I think if this happens to a real person, I would imagine that you ask someone in the program what to do, or ask even a resident, and you can just, you know, talk about that. Yeah, but I agree, it's a very, yeah, but just know that, I mean, this time around, it's for you to talk more confidently and, you know, say like, I'm very, you know, I believe that this time around I have a very good chance here, this and that, because, I mean, calling you for the second time, they like something about you. But that's what I think. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that feedback. I have a question for Dr. Lushala Fakpo. Are you available?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So your question is this, and it may not really apply 100% to you. Your spouse is a first-year resident in our program. What are your plans in case you don't match into our program?
I would say that I am very hopeful and I am a competitive candidate to this program. But but right now I work as an epidemiologist conducting research on the pediatric population. So what I would do is I would continue the research I've been conducting. Also, I would go back to the draw table and see the reason why I did not match to this program. And then I can come up with strategies to make myself a more competitive candidate that I am right now. But just to reiterate that I think I'm a competitive candidate because I've been able to provide care to children in to the pediatric population in the past. I've been able to conduct research on the pediatric population. I have taught also, and I've taught students, and I believe those are some values you hold there as a program, and I hope to bring to this program.
Okay, thank you very much. So not an easy question.
It's 4 o'clock.
So that's about, but that's the whole essence. So we want people to feel comfortable taking questions that was not anticipated. I'm going to let Dr. Obina share his take on this.
So I was a bit confused when you asked this question, Dr. O, because this question could go in two ways. The question could be asked in such a way that, okay, your spouse is a first year in this program. What if you don't match into this program? It doesn't mean that you didn't match, but you didn't match into this program. So that's one take on it.
That was a question. I guess you just turned it that way, which is fine. So that was the question.
Yeah, so that was actually the question, right? Because when you were asking me, that's kind of what I was getting from that question. So, yeah, so I mean, it depends. Like, it could be. Exactly.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. I didn't know.
I think that's what Dr. O was getting at with that question, and it's actually a valid question. If you do interview in a place where your spouse is, they're definitely going to. That's like a question that in fact, I should even say you should put it as number 3 on your question list because they are going to ask you that question. What if you don't match here? Your spouse is here, so what if you don't match? What are you going to do? And
Sorry,
if
do you
they
want
really
me to try
more
again?
like curiosity.
No, no, don't try again, but that's fine.
But yeah, so if that's what I was asked, of course I'll take it that way. Yeah, I like the way you started with the answer. Like you're a hopeful candidate. You believe you're a strong candidate because of these values you have and everything. You've seen my CV. Like I guess you can even talk about some of your strengths and why you're a good candidate and you're hopeful about matching into this program. But if you are not to match into this program, you've spoken with it about your spouse. Both of you have put your careers ahead in the terms of you're both trying to make sure that both of you are able to achieve your ultimate career goal and your dream. And so even if it wasn't in a place that was here, hopefully a place nearby, even if it was a place that was far away, we'll kind of walk around it somehow. You can whatever answer you want to give. If you say maybe we can be flying like every weekend that we're free to see each other and whatever, just it's more like just trying to come up with a plan and something that you guys have talked about and you've thought about, and it's not really. But basically how the approach I'll take is I wouldn't try to make it sound as if your career is not the foremost, because you're here, we're all here for residency, you're in an interview for a residency program, so you want to make sure that that's your ultimate goal in life, basically. So regardless of your family, regardless of whatever is happening, this is your ultimate goal. You're here for this. It doesn't matter where you're going to get it. It doesn't matter where you're going, as long as you're getting there and you're being able to achieve your career goal. But still try to make it sound like that program you're interviewing at is the goal. I'm here, I'm at this program, and this is the program I want to be at. And this is the reasons why I want to be in your program because of so and so and so. So yes, I like that approach. I probably wouldn't make it as I wouldn't try to. I felt like you are going on to mention your strengths a lot. Like it sounded a bit repetitive to me. And so I guess you're the one that also answered the other question. Just try not to. I think your answers sound a bit rehearsed to me, just me listening to you. So it's something you really have to work on. Just try not to be repetitive when you're talking about your strengths, just throw it out in bullet points. Except the only time I'll tell people to maybe go on about, is when they're particularly asking you about your strengths. But if you're bringing it into a narrative of a different question, I'll just blot it out and tell you, okay, this is it, this is it, this is it. This is the reasons why I'm hopeful to match your program because I'm this and I'm this and I'm this. And you just keep it at that. You don't have to go into long stories. The real question is, what are you going to do if you don't match here? So you still want to stick to that narrative and make sure that that point has been driven across. Everything else is ancillary. Make it in bullet points. Don't try to, because I felt like it seemed like the question was drifting. Because when I was listening to your answer, I began to even ask myself, what was the question again? Because I didn't. So you want to make sure that your answers are spot on, straight on. Make sure you're trying to convince the interviewer, the point you're trying to get across. But it was a good attempt overall.
Thank you very much. So back to this same question. Many of these questions are based on real life situation. So, and we've had to deal with this in past years. But one aspect of this, in responding to this question that you might want to consider is if you truly have good points beyond your resume and the fact that your spouse is in that program, this is the opportunity to bring it out. I have a 2-year-old who is already, gotten used to friends in this locality. I have a 7-year-old, the babysitter is here. My brother-in-law lives in the same town. So throw all those things in because they become an emotional, components of your package that may kind of work in your favor. So, and it just brings out the reality. Of course, if I don't match, these are my plans to now do X, Y, Z. So you can take that approach. So I have a question here for Dr. Tomi. Are you available, Dr. Tomi?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. What non-medical book are you reading now? What attracted you to the book?
Okay, that's an interesting question. And to be honest, at the moment, I'm not reading any book that is non-medical because I'm preparing for step 3, so I'm doing a lot of academic reading. But one book I think I'd like to read once I get the exam done is Becoming by Michelle Obama, and I have it on my list of books to read because I think it would be good to see through the eyes of somebody who has achieved a lot And as a Black woman, which I am also one, I think there's a lot us tend to learn from reading the autobiography of somebody who's been able to make an impact in life. That's something I hope to do also. So yeah, that's what I plan. That's one of the books I plan to read once I get the time to do. Um, yes, thank you.
I'm going to let Dr. Obina handle that, and I'll save the last question for Dr. Tolu.
So there's a general saying that we should avoid religion, we should avoid race, we should avoid politics. So I don't know. I mean, it sounded like a sincere answer. So I'm not sure if I should pick that. But if you could find something else, you could stick with the Obama story. But I don't know if, like, when you started saying, "Oh, she's a Black woman, I'm a Black woman," in my mind I was like, depending on the interviewer. So I'm not saying, yes, it's good to identify, it's good to, be proud of your roots and all that, but you still want to be a bit generalized and just trying to play it a bit safe, depending on where you're going. Because, well, I guess I'm speaking on a Nigerian forum, so I can say, you're in America and you just know, right? So, yeah. And then, I mean, to me, honestly, I felt like you dodged the question. That's why I said, listen, when you guys are interviewing, just stick
Yes,
to the
it's
answer.
true.
Just if they ask you a question, even if you have to make up something on the spot and you're a good storyteller, tell the story. This is the book I'm reading that is not medical. I've been, even if it's a novel you read in the past, you can make it seem as if this is what you're reading now. What I tried to do, I mean, if I was going to be asked that question, it never, well, this question, to be honest, didn't really come up as much in my interviews, but I could just pick up on maybe, like, there's some books I read that turned out to be movies, which I watched, and they were terrific movies. So I can just pick up on a movie that I've watched and like that has the book, and I'm like, okay, this is the book I'm reading right now, and these are some of the things I'm seeing in the book, and this is something I'm finding interesting. And I'm actually, beginning to learn a lot about myself, reading through this book. I'm seeing a lot of, how, just, yeah, exactly. Then when you're bringing out the points in the book that you're reading, you still want to kind of make it reflect. Like, you're learning something, reading through this, you've been able to learn this and this and this. And you're trying to even look back at yourself and you're wondering, how this is, how this impacts you. And you've seen that you've been able to change this and so just by, these examples. So, like, you have to try and, find a link. Sometimes the question seems very, like, random and it seems like maybe they're just trying to know about you. But that's why I said you don't know who the interviewer is and you don't know how many questions you're going to be asked. So at every opportunity, you still want to find a way to sell yourself. I literally went to interviews where I went down and they just asked me one question, and that was it. Because they don't, I mean, they just want to, sometimes they just probably just want to get to know you, or they just want to see, the kind of response you're giving, to know the kind of personality you have and all that. But like you get interviews where you're literally asked one or two questions and that's it. And then by the time you leave the interview, you begin to wonder, like, did you really sell yourself to this person? So you don't want to leave the interview room feeling that way. So that's why it's good to practice your answers like that. Yes, people have different opinions. People say it's too much, you're doing too much akada, it's too akada, you want to relax a little bit. But I feel like, I mean, it's not the time to relax. There are some times where you get to relax with the interview, obviously, because depending on how the interview is going, there are some sessions that you can, but just always try to bring out your strengths in every answer you're giving, and also try to link it towards the reason why you're there for that position in every sort of way you can. So that's my critique.
So thank you very much. That particular question was actually placed in the pool for two reasons. One, so that you can find a better way to respond to it. Secondly, is also to encourage everyone to have one small book that you're reading during flights, during travel, because usually the question will come out as what book have you read or you found interesting in the past. Because after a while, interviewers are tired of same questions like, okay, tell me about, a book you've read or a book you're reading now, or it may actually be a book in your hand. That's the whole idea behind that particular question. So find a short book, doesn't need to be anything extensive, but thanks for being open that, there's nothing wrong with being sincere and just kind of like you did try to answer indirectly, but that's not a bad take. So is Dr. Kenechukwu still available? I think we lost him on the last session. Are you still there? Okay, so Dr. Kenechukwu is not here. So I'm going to throw this last question to the non-active
Yeah,
participants.
sorry, Dr. Kenechukwu, I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Okay, thank you very much. So I
Yeah.
have this one question for you. What would you do if you're on call during the weekend, but you feel emotionally drained and exhausted to handle the demand of work?
Hi. Did you say Folu or
Um,
Tolu?
This will be Dr. Kenechukwu. I think he
Oh, okay.
said is here. Dr.
yes,
Kenechukwu. Oh, are you okay? Are you able to take that question, or is it something you want to?
no, I didn't get the question. Can I get it again?
Okay, I'll repeat that. So, what would you do if you're on call during the weekend, but you feel emotionally drained and exhausted to handle the demand of work?
Okay. I know that at certain times one could get overwhelmed by work and or maybe some other personal issues may interfere with how you deliver your services to patients, and um, patient's care shouldn't be compromised for any reason. So if I find myself not being able to offer effective care, I will talk to my fellow residents or the chief resident and explain myself to her and or him, and then if it's possible to get someone to work in my place while I sort out my personal issues. But if a solution could not be try to soldier on and try and up to the remaining hours, because patient care is my primary concern, and our personal issues shouldn't place of that. So I think that'll be my response to that.
Thank you very much. I'll have Dr. Tolu help us out with that question.
Yeah, so this is a very interesting question. Actually, this is something that currently in the general med world, they are pushing for it. And this is a very tricky question too. I mean, for a general med education, they're trying to see, can you recognize your personal limitations, and where do you say, oh, I don't think I'm competent enough, maybe not competent, I can provide the best care for my patient, like, that right now I cannot. That's one thing. The other thing is, I don't think you should interpret the question for the interviewer, because you try to explain that, well, person and work can be overwhelming and personal issues can come in. So it already throws like a different light on the question, because when I saw it just seemed more like you could be ill. This shows like you're ill. No matter what's happening, they've already said you're emotionally drained, you're exhausted. It could be physical exhaustion. You don't have to explain, because they expect you to be able to juggle stuff, in residence. That's like the baseline expectations, that things can be happening at home. If it gets too overwhelming, you can't do stuff, then someone steps in. But then it depends on who your interviewer is. If it's a psychiatry interview and you say things like, I'll speak with, if at that point I see that I can provide the best care or patient care will be compromised, I'll speak with my chief resident on seeing if another resident could cover me while I get better. It's well received, things that's like general stuff. But you don't want to, talk about your personal life, for example, if it's a surgical interview or because when it comes to resident wellness, this is just generally speaking, they're not there yet. They still feel like residents should soldier on. So honestly, I would just stick with the safe answer that recognizing my limitations right here, I don't want to compromise patient care. So I will let my chief resident know, and we'll come up with a plan on who can cover for me, my shift. Maybe I swap with somebody else. That's like a safe answer. That isn't what like I'll soldier on. Yeah, because it's causing a bit of some ripples right now in the med world. So I think safer it is, yeah. Just stick with the safer. So that's what I think. But I don't know if Dr. Obina has and something else to add, because
I
he has
actually
more years
had,
in
yeah.
residency. Yeah.
I had, but I like your response. I completely agree with your response, and I don't want you to say it's a safe response. I will tell you that this is the response that they're expecting to hear. Because I mean, one thing about residency is sometimes they ask questions based on what's been happening in the program. Like in my program, there was the program I matched into. They asked me a particular question about that, and when I got into the program, I realized, oh, this is why they were really hard on this question. Because when they asked me that particular question, I felt like they were really pushing, like they really wanted to know what my answer was for that. Like when I was listing my answers or saying, the program director, he wasn't the one who interviewed me. Sorry, whoever, I can't remember who interviewed me then. He was literally writing down. Okay, sorry, he's now the program director, but at that time he wasn't. He was literally writing everything down that I was saying for that particular question. But when I got into the program, I realized, oh, this is probably why they were asking me. So in residency, they expect that you're going to be burned out, they expect that you're going to be fatigued, and they expect that you're going to fall ill. So basically, they're trying to ask you, what are you going to do in this situation? Because we probably had situations in the past where people carry their sick bodies to work and then they ended up messing patients up and, like messing up patient care. There are other times that they, nothing much was going on. They were not trying to communicate effectively and they decided to miss work. And then they were expecting them to be at work. And then all of a sudden, we're hearing that the person is sick somewhere and nobody knows about it. So those are like the two takes on it. So they just want you to be as clear and as honest as possible if you fall into that situation. And they want you to actually know that you know your limitations. If you feel very fat. So how I'll go about that response towards me is I have deep insight into my well-being. And I usually know when I'm getting to that point where I feel like I'm not going to be efficient at work. Sometimes I may have just like just have like maybe a flu, or I could just maybe be feeling a little weak. But by the time I get up in the morning, somehow I just see my strength coming back. And then I can, okay, if it's that situation, then I can try and see if I could soldier on. But once it gets to that point where I know that this is it's not working out for me, I don't feel like I can do it, I'm too sick, I'm too tired, I will let somebody know, whoever it is in charge. Usually it's the chief resident who is above all the residents. So that's your first point of contact. So yes, you let the chief resident know and see if there's somebody that could cover for you at that point. And you wouldn't, and immediate once you begin to feel like your energy is coming back, and once you begin to feel like you're fit enough to go back to work, then you also let them know, and then you're pretty much ready to continue and forge on, or however you want to put it. But I wanted to have the mindset that this is a very straightforward question. It's not, nobody is trying to trick you or anything. If you're tired, if you're sick, you should let your chief resident know. That's what they expect. That's the expectation. Nobody's expecting you to soldier on. People fall sick. You will fall sick. We want to know what you're going to do when you fall sick. Basically, that's what the question is saying. So yeah, that's the appropriate response. It's not a safe response. It's actually what they're looking out for. The question they asked me then was, how do I how do I deal with conflict, especially with fellow residents? Like and they actually gave me a specific example. Like if a resident does, I can't remember what it was. And I was like, well, it's not a question I get all the time, but I tried to pull through that question. And then by the time I came to the program, there were like literally stories and stories and stories and stories of how this resident did this and this resident had the fight with this other resident and how this other resident. So I mean, to you, it begins to make sense why they're asking these questions, because they don't want to get into that kind of situation again. So basically, that's the critique I have to give. It's a straightforward question. They're asking it for a reason. Give your straightforward answer. Make sure you're as honest as possible. And yeah, that's it.
Okay, fine. Thank you, Dr. Obina.
Thank you.
So the final phase of this session will give each of the active participants one shot at asking a question or something on their minds for those on the panel to address. So we'll start with Dr. Otomi. If you don't have any question, just let us know so we can pass on that.
So did you come in?
Yes, this is the final phase where we're looking for feedback or question. There might be something that you wanted us want us to address, and you're allowed one question.
I believe it's positive attitude towards patient care learning had good fun.
See what that person talking in.
We're having training.
Okay, Dr. Tommy, are you available? We'll move on to someone else.
Yes, sir. At the moment, I think the only question I think for everybody's contribution in terms is just like, I think I struggled with wrapping up one of my answers, and I wanted to know if there was like any tip for that to end the answers. I know last week Dr. Funshaw recommended saying your 3 bullet points again, but there are some questions that is not like 3 bullet points or anything. I'm just don't want to be stuck with saying thank you at the end of every answer. So I just wonder if there's anything any of the Dr. Tolu or Dr. Obina or Dr. O could say about that.
Before we let the other interviewers step in, be careful where, because everyone has different style, so don't completely ignore your style of conversation or dealing with questions in general. The 3 bullet points or the opportunity to sell yourself may not happen with every question. So don't box yourself in where you start with 1 and then by the time you get to 2, you can't remember what to put in as, and then you're saying lastly when there's nothing to say. So just kind of loosen up your take on that approach. So it doesn't have to be all bullet point, because some of these things are not going to allow you, questions won't allow you to do that. And then I'll just let Dr. Tolu say a part.
Okay, so personally, I don't know how to summarize 3 bullet points at the end, and I didn't do that during my interviews. So, like Mr. O said, know your personal style. For me, when I was done answering the questions, I was done. And because it was a conversation, there wasn't an awkward silence. There was no thank you after. Just put in your mind, don't say thank you after you answer your question. There is no thank you. As in, there's nothing of thanking them for the conversation. So just have that rule in your mind. And when you're done answering, you're done answering. And because it's an interview, it's like a talk. It's not like it's awkward. The person's either nodding and saying, "Oh, I see. You mentioned this. Can you say more about that?" Do you get my point? So it's not really like it won't really be this way. Like just ask, stop. It's more like it's ongoing. They're not nodding or looking at you like, "What are you talking about?" or asking you to say more about something you mentioned. So yeah, just don't say thank you, but don't get awkward silence when you're done. And also go with your personal style. That's what I have to say.
Okay, thank you. I guess I get that. It's just to know that in the real situation, it's a conversation, not like I have to close every answer.
Yeah. The only cool thing you need to do is maybe like say things like, "Oh, I'm really excited to be here," or when you're done and you're saying bye, you say, "Thank you so much. It was really great meeting you. I had an exciting time with you." These are like the usual closings that make person feel like, "Oh, I did a good job as an interviewer today," But for question related stuff, when you're done, you're done. It just keeps going.
Thank you very
So,
much.
I mean, I think it depends on the interviewer too, because there are some, and also the question, because there are some interviewers and there are some questions that are literally open-ended. Why are you in love with internal medicine? And they'll sit down there and they'll listen to you ramble on and on. I'm telling you, you literally get people. They'll just ask you the question and they'll sit down and listen to you. Yes, it may start out as a conversation, but then sometimes it bumps off into like specific questions that they are literally listening to you and looking out for your answer. And some of them will actually have time to sit down and listen through the whole rambling you're doing. So I still think finding a way to close your answers is still a good thing to be practicing, especially with the real big questions like why are you interested in this specialty? Why are you interested in this program? Why should we choose you? And so, I mean, yes, avoid thank you, avoid repetitions. Sometimes you could finish your answer and just leave it at that, like you're done. That's the end. Or another approach I would say is you could maybe, like, let's say, why are you interested in internal medicine? Something like somebody like me, I'll say, I'm interested in internal medicine because this. And when I'm finished, and I'm like, these are the reasons why I'm interested in this specialty. That's it. Or you could just not say anything. Honestly, that was actually my style. I just answer the question and finish. You don't have to say, "Oh, thank you for the question. So thank you," or I don't know. I think a lot of us, the habit I'm seeing a lot is thank you. sometimes I hear people saying that's it. I don't know if that's it is a good way to close. I mean, you can just finish the answer and the person when you stop talking, the person you're looking at will probably get a clue like, okay, this is probably or they'll probably jump into a different question. I know that there could be an awkward silence, but it just practice your answers in such a way that when you're getting to the closing, that person is aware that this is the closing. So you can just say something like, well, I guess maybe if you really don't have anything to say and you're trying to look for a closing, you can use the question like, these are the reasons why I'm interested in internal medicine. These are the reasons why I'm interested in your specialty. That's why I don't like moonlighting. That is why, just trying to let them know, okay, this is like the closing. Instead of saying thank you, that's it. Some other things I hear, some other awkward things I hear. So I guess everybody's style is different. Stick to your style, but just avoid bad habits. That's all I'll say.
Dr. Kenneth Chuku, do you have any question for us, for the panel?
No, no question. No question.
Dr. Lushola Fapo, do you have any question for the panelists?
Yes, I do have a question, sir. So I just want to say thank you, first of all, for all the feedback I got. However, I remember on one of the interview sessions we had, we were told that if you are asked the reason why you chose a specialty and you discuss the reason in your personal statement, you should not talk about something else. I want to know where the balance is, because then I could talk about more specific things now. How do I balance that with what I actually wrote previously in my personal statement? Also, I want to add that from the feedback I got, it seemed I was rehearsed. I was reading from a book or something, but I am actually not. I'm saying it from my head. So I'm asking for how I could practice so that I don't sound rehearsed when I'm delivering my questions.
Okay, I guess that's for me, right? Because I was the one that gave that critique. I guess, I mean, I didn't, it just seemed to me, I don't know, it was just kind of coming across to me that way, listening to you through the phone. So it could be different if I was like sitting in front of you and you are delivering that answer to me. So this is something that is very subjective. It's not something that it's just a feeling. It's just something I'm just getting just by me listening to you, you get. Or maybe because of how maybe picky I am, or, somebody else may not feel that way, but it just, to me, you're just coming up like that. So what I'll say is you can maybe talk with, like if you have a close friend or somebody you can trust, who you can just talk to on the regular and you feel like you're a normal person when you talk to them, you can maybe deliver your answers to them like that and then just ask them how they feel. Like, do you feel like this is rehearsed? Is there another way I could say it so it doesn't basically some of these things it's just more like you're trying to have a conversation. You don't want to sound like, I know it's some people, it's easy for some people to memorize things and be able to just pour it out, but then you don't want to make it obvious that it's like, to me it sounded like you were just pouring, they were just coming out, and it just sounded like kind of robotic in a way. You don't want it to make it sound like that. Yes, I know it's hard for me to explain now, but just try and mix your, when you're talking about it, like the tone of your voice, some of the words, and just try to mix it a little bit and make it seem more like you're having a conversation and it's more down to earth and it's not like you're just reciting and it's subjective. I know. Just practice, practice, practice. The more you practice it, the more you get in tune with it. And then for the first question, I don't even know who gave you that notion. I've never heard about that you can't talk about things outside your CV. I don't think I've heard it before. But whoever gave you that notion, I think you should scratch it out of your head right now because that's completely false. The reason why
Okay.
you like you can come up with reasons why you like internal medicine that was not on your personal statement. But yes, I mean, your personal statement is just, I feel like a personal statement is like a short bulletin of your life story and everything. A bulletin is not your whole life story. A story that you're telling on a short paper that is how many words is not everything about you. So yes, things can come up. You can talk about things that are not in your personal statement. What I'll say is when you're beginning to conflict things that were specifically stated in your personal statement, that's where you now have to be careful. Like let's say after, like in your personal statement, you said like when you graduated, immediately after you graduated, you traveled to the US and you started doing rotations or something like that. And then in interview, when they're asking you, you're like, when you finish your medical school, you worked in this place and you worked in this place in Nigeria, and then you went to this one, and then you now came to the US. I mean, somebody who has thoroughly read through your personal statement begins to wonder, like, okay, why you're saying something that is kind of not, in line with what I'm seeing, or something. But in terms of things like why you're interested in this specialty, why you're choosing to, you can. What I feel is you definitely you remember what's on your personal statement. So for me, I definitely remember what's on my personal statement. So you start with that. Of course, these are the things you remember. It's your personal statement. You wrote it. You remember it. You can talk about it. It's better to even start with what's on your personal statement because that's the reason why they called you for the interview in the first place. But if there are some other points that you may have figured out along the way, which was not written, of course, why not? This is it. This is you. This is the reason why you're interested. You list those points. Try to convince the interviewer that this is the point. This is the reason why you're in love with it, and these are some of the points you were able to come across. Blah 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 blah. But for those very subjective, like those like the reason why you're interested in specialty and all those things are not. I don't think you have to stick with the storyline of your personal statement per se. Yes, you have to. You can mention some things there, and you can mention some things afterwards, but it doesn't have to be exactly 100%. But remember, just recapping again, when you write your personal statement, there are some things that are still you don't want to just go completely against your personal statement in some certain things. Like I just gave you an example. Like there are some things that you've clearly documented that this is exactly what. Like let's say or maybe you could say something like you are married or I don't know. Okay, you got married, your wife is here or something, and then you decided to leave Nigeria to come to the US because basically you have a family, and then you come to the interview and you now maybe say something like something else that is not related to what you wrote down, like it's like a specific thing that is on your personal statement that is just completely conflicting against what you wrote, something like that. Those are the kind of instances. Then I'll say that you have to be very careful. So that's the response I have to give.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, any question from Dr. Ifeolutola?
No.
Okay. And a question from Dr. Tolu.
Yes, I have a question for the panelists. I'd like to know to get their advice on pre-interview dinners. Like I've read different things. I read that they're not particularly evaluating you during the dinners. You can tell them something. You can talk to the residents, but then if you say something really bad, that's when they can then rat on you. And then another one will say they're watching every move is a form of interview. So I want to know if they've had first-hand experience, like they had pre-interview dinners, then how did they handle it, and what advice can they give?
Okay.
So that'll be for Dr.
Tolu.
Tolu and Dr.
Okay.
Obina.
Okay.
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 Okay. When you were talking about pre-interview dinners, it made me laugh because I remember one of my pre-interview dinners. It was low key and all of that. And the next day, I was talking with the chief resident because he had tenants. He said, "Oh, that I don't have any questions for you. Let's just fix this puzzle." And I was like, "Okay." He said, "Because I noticed you yesterday pre-interview dinner, and I think I can work with you." That was what he told me. So the notion that they're not evaluating you is wrong because, for example, in my program, I'm going to be at the pre-interview dinners, and there are things that, they didn't say look out for, but it's just like the general low-key notion that we're looking out for. So in as much as pre-interview dinners don't carry the same pressure as the real interviews, you still go there, you're not going to be stiff. You're going to make conversations, but they're going to evaluate you. So wherever they're not evaluating you, I think I don't know I don't know how different programs are, but in my experience, it's a low-key form of evaluation. That's one. The second thing is for pre-interview dinners, just be prepared to, I think, small talk. In my experience, it was just small talk. Light topics like movies, shows, podcasts, if you have a pet, how did your trip go, where you're coming from, things like that. And you mostly go around the table, depending on how it is, and talk about yourself, talk about where you live, things like that. So just get ready for stuff like that. Get ready for personal questions, more like, oh, do you have kids? Because that's the chance residents have to get to know you. Also dress well. You don't have to wear a suit. But some people wore like denims. And honestly, I just felt like, even if I was an interviewer, I was like, why will you dress so casually to this? We try to sell, just come, but you want to go there business casual, not too formal, but of course you're looking good and everything looks like, oh yeah, you're ready for this. But I don't think you should go there wearing like jeans or funny jackets, stuff like that. Just go looking like really good. And I think these are the tips I have for pre-interview dinners, but it's the way they're evaluating you. And shy away from political things like, was said today, political things, racial stuff, and don't talk about exams if you can, because the ANGs, they're most likely preparing for step 2 CK. And that will come up, or how the step 2 CS go. If it's a general question, you can just, talk about generally how it went and all of that, but shy away from what was your score, what did you get, things like that. And ask residents questions. They're going to, they want to talk to you and say things about the program, have questions ready, things like, why did you choose the program, what do you like about it, how is the faculty like, what's the person internship like, what's there to do, things like that. If you want to ask about raising your kids, that's the time to talk about it at the pre-interview dinner, but they are low-key evaluating you.
Okay. Oh, thank you for that.
Okay. I have the last slot for Dr. Foluwakemi. Any question for the panelists? Dr. Foluwakemi, any questions? I'll take it that there's none. So we thank everybody that. Okay, are you back? Available?
Yes, I am. No, I actually just put my phone on silent.
Okay.
Okay,
Any question?
one of my question is basically you know how I think they answered some of the question, but is there a reason? Sorry. Okay, I think they answered most of my question, but one question I have is when they ask us some question and maybe we don't know what to say at the moment, is it okay for us to say, can you give me a moment to think about it? Let me get back to you on it. Would that be somehow, or we just have to make up something on this at the moment? That's my question. Like, do we have to answer every question even though we don't know what to say? Can we get back to them like, oh, can you give me a moment to think about it and get back to you on that? That's my question. Is it okay to say that?
Dr. Tolu, what do you think?
I think it depends on the type of question. I mean, if it's like an exact, maybe, I know sometimes they tell you to talk about something in, maybe like a very exact medical question that you need to think about it. You can say you need something to think about it, yeah. So I think it's a yes and no, depending on the question. Personally, I'm the type of person that I did a lot of thinking on the spot, because I remember I had an interview that everything I practiced, they asked me something that I didn't see coming, So I think I said something like, that's a very interesting question. I'm going to take a moment to just really think about it. Then I started talking, and the guy said, oh, yeah, sure, but I didn't spend too much time thinking about it. That was how I started, I didn't spend much time thinking about it. I said what I could at that moment. But for things that I know that even if I think about it, I won't know the answer. Like maybe a medical question, and I'm like, what in the world? Is it to say, oh, I don't remember at this moment? Is it okay if I get back to you on that? And maybe when you send your thank you email, you send, oh, I checked this up and I see that this is, what is used or what is done. So I think it could go both ways depending on the question.
So for me, I think that it's like the way you said it. I think it's not a good thing to do on an interview, and I know it may come off as harsh, it may come off as unrealistic, but that's just the way it is. Like if I was interviewing you and I'm asking you a question, and like if it's a straightforward question, I believe if you practiced enough, you should have answers for every single question that you're going to be asked. Except okay, if there's a question that you don't really have an answer to, you should still answer it in a way to let them know that this is not something you really thought about. But if it was to happen to you, this is probably how you would have done it. You just have to have an answer. It's not because then if you, I feel like if you say it back that way, it may, okay, basically it could come off to the interviewer as this is an awkward question or this question should you have even been asked. Even if you tell them to come back to that question, they're probably not going to come back to it. I can bet you on that. Like if you tell them, let me get back to you on that question, they're probably just going to move on to a different question and they're probably not going to come back to that question. And it's already an awkward situation that you have created yourself. So you don't want to be in that kind of situation. What I'll say is, first of all, get into that mindset that every single question is an important question and you have an answer for every single question. Like I don't believe you can't have an answer for a question, even if you haven't been in that situation in the past. Maybe it could be like a situational, like okay, tell me about tell me about a situation where this and this and this happened. You may not have been in that situation, but if I was going to answer the question, I'll say if I was in this situation or if this was presented to me, this is probably how I'd have gone about it. Like there sometimes I actually go through the KAINJI list and I'm going through all the questions and I begin to ask myself, is there really any question I can't answer here, or is there any question you don't really have an answer to? If you're a human being and if you have a personality and if things have happened to you, you definitely have an answer for all those questions. So I want you to start straying away and running far away from that mindset of that there's possibly going to be a question where I can say that let me take time to think about it or let me get back to that question. Run away from that. Practice questions, look up questions online, in fact, tell people to just ask you questions on the spot randomly, like silly questions, whatever kind of questions they can ask you, and just see if you can come up with an answer to that question. That makes a good interviewer. A good interviewer has answers on the spot. You have to be able to know how to just come up with something on the spot. It may not be something that completely makes sense, but somehow you can kind of walk your way through that point you're making and try to convince the interviewer that this is you. This is what you're all about. Sometimes the question may not be directly pertaining to you, but you have to find a way to bring that question and tie that question back to you. I don't think in all the interviews, listen, I went for about 6 interviews during residency. I usually don't say it out, but I'm going to say it now. I went for 6 interviews during my residency, and for fellowship, I went for 17 interviews. Every single interview question, I don't think there was really any question whatsoever that I'll tell you that this was a question that was kind of taken aback and I just didn't really have anything to say. There were some questions that I didn't, it just came to me like, oh, like a shocking, like, oh my God, like, how could they be asking me this question? It was like a shock factor. But if you really look at yourself and if you really come down and think about that question, you'll come up with an answer. You definitely have an answer for every single question. So what I'll say is just run away from that mindset. Don't allow it to be part of you. Don't even try to feel like you can dodge a question or you cannot answer a question. So that's the point I'm trying to make. So yeah, that's all I'll say.
Excellent. So we did very well today. Thank you, Dr. Bina, Dr. Tolu, everyone that participated on this session. There'll be a recording of this available in 24 hours. Just some minor editing will be done. And have a pleasant day. Enjoy your evening and afternoon.